Mauritian bank group Afrasia has announced a major capital injection into its local entity to benefit the mining, manufacturing, agricultural and tourism sectors.
We've similarly identified another investor coming in, an international institutional investor coming in with another $10 million US, and we will partner with that investor to have another $10 million, making fresh capital of $20 million into the group.
The injection will raise Afrasia's stake in its Zimbabwe holding to 62.5%, far higher than the local black equity laws allow. But the finance minister is desperate to revive the economy.
I'm quite comfortable with that dilution because it increases the volume of credit to the productive sector. It increases the volume of credit to the productive sector at a time when our own people have no capacity to buy the equity. So it's an issue with respect to increasing local participation.
Zimbabwe has previously threatened to withdraw licenses of banks which refuse to comply with the laws, but it now appears to be prepared to review the regulations amidst warnings that the sector could collapse.
What is sometimes peddled that you bring in your 20 million and we are 51, we take 51% of that, it's nonsense. And let it go out, it's nonsense. We have never said it and will not do it. We are not going to get 51% of anyone's money.
Zimbabwe says it will develop a plan to increase local participation in all sectors. Shingai Nyoka, SABC News, Harare, Zimbabwe.
Our correspondent in Harare, Shingai Nyoka, now joins us on the line. Well, Shingai, quite an interesting viewpoint there coming from the minister in as far as the locals being able to afford to purchase equity in the markets. Now, tell us about when he says they've never said they're going to take 51% of anybody's business, but yet on the other hand, we can see that actually the government is encouraging ownership in as far as some, companies are concerned.
Well, you rightly point out, Colin, that really from the beginning, the government's war cry has been that Zimbabwe can go it alone, that it'll go ahead regardless with this particular policy of handing over or buying or allowing locals to buy equity in some of these companies. But clearly, because of the economic problems that the country is facing, that to government really it doesn't appear realistic anymore. And what we've seen over the last 3 to 4 months or ever since the election is a softening stance by government towards these issues of indigenization with the mining sector. Many of the foreign-owned companies have already agreed to particular terms. But there have also been propositions that government might be willing to consider softening that particular position if the mining companies invest in beneficiation. And so really in all of the sectors, we've seen the government realizing that perhaps for the time being it cannot go it alone.
All right, so now is this actually a huge clampdown by the government in as far as private business enterprises are concerned?
What they're saying is that for this particular short to medium term, it's likely not to be realistic to expect locals to come up with the money to buy the 51% equity in some of these companies. What they're saying is that for the meantime, they might relax the particular conditions with a long-term view to looking at ways in which, creative ways in which the local population will be able to participate. And so really, maybe it's not so much a climb down, but it's just a realistic realization that perhaps it's not realistic at this point in time to be able to demand 51% ownership for locals in some of these companies.
Now, within cabinet, there seems to be disharmony among the ministers who, when it comes to empowerment, you have those hardliners who are actually opposed to the views of conservatives. How the policy shape amidst such differences?
Well, it's clear that President Mugabe has a very firm hand on the final outcome of any of these discussions. He has been insisting, and recently he's been talking about the fact that there might need to be a revision to a certain extent. That if companies come in with 100% of the capital, that they will not be required to submit. They're not required to submit 51% of that money. Really, there has been a lot of disharmony within the different sectors, particularly tourism has spoken out about the impact that some of the indigenization has had on conservancies. But ultimately, it's President Mugabe who will have the final decision about what stages or when these sectors should comply.
Right. Of course, this correspondent in Harare, Shingai Nyoka, talking to us about the latest developments in the economy in that country there. And of course, moving further afield,